Welcome to the AMA Future of Marketing Summit. We are back for our featured panel of the day of marketing leaders, and I am so excited to bring on three amazing speakers. First of all, we've got Sepanta Bagherpour, who is the CMO of Nandos PERi, which is an amazing quick service restaurant with fantastic chicken, and their top level super spicy sauce is my preferred choice. Not that matters at all for this panel. We also have Katya Andreson, who is the SVP of Customer Card Experience at Capital One. And last but not least, Bill Kircos, the VP of Global Marketing at Honeywell. So welcome to all of you. I'm so excited for our conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So let me start off with a question maybe for you, Bill. And what I thought we could start with is just, we're all dealing with this disruption. We're all dealing with these challenges when it comes to marketing. One of the big questions that I've heard many people struggle with is, should we be marketing at all right now? Is it sensitive to be marketing when so many people are dealing with so many things? Can you take us inside? How do you answer that question for Honeywell and for your team when it comes to should we be marketing? And if the answer is yes, what do you say, or how has it changed?
Yeah, I mean, the answer is yes. It's really more about how. So when inside Honeywell, what we talk about is really focused on short-term demand generation, right? Because there's been kind of a pause in the US economy. And so how do you do that? You do that through pricing, sales focus, and marketing. And so I would say it's a definite yes on marketing for sure. But the how part is where we've changed. We've really kind of evolved from mass marketing, right, and the budgets that are required for big mass marketing, and really narrowed down into account-based marketing and what we call marketing to one, really highly personalized, highly customer-centric marketing.
Yeah, and that's something that, I mean, you don't really necessarily pivot to start doing that because of a pandemic, right? You, to some degree, are already ready to do that, and you're just kind of activating that lever.
Yeah, it was interesting. We've always done it, I wouldn't say half-heartedly, but more experimental. Let's see if it's working. Let's tweak this. Let's go do that. But I'll tell you, the marketing budgets appropriately aren't as high as they were, at least in my division, before COVID, right? So it was almost a forcing function to say, hey, we got to go 2 feet in on this and let's see what happens. And honestly, we're seeing unbelievable results on spends of $2,000, $5,000, $10,000 in terms of working with our customers and trying to land sales lead or revenue or deals. So it's actually been really interesting. I'm a big fan of innovating during downturns, and I think that's what we're trying to do at Honeywell.
Yeah, innovating during a downturn. I mean, that is what a lot of smart brands are starting to think about. And I wonder, Katya, when you think about, you've got an interesting lens on this topic, I think, because you touch on marketing, but you're really focused on the card experience, the customer experience. And something that marketers talk a lot about is how we need to be able to better understand our customers. And you could say perhaps that's more important now than ever before, because things have changed for so many people. So when you think about that, and when you interface understanding your customer's experience with marketing, what have been some big priorities for you right now?
You're right. My team spans both customer experience and marketing, which I think is important, because if we think about what we want from marketing, we want to build a great brand. And a great brand is not what we put out in the world. It's what people take from their experiences with us in the world, right? And so it's very exciting at Capital One that we've pulled together all of the teams with different touch points with the customer, as well as the marketing teams, and looking at that as a holistic experience and thinking about how we show up in ways that are meaningful to the customer. I think there are a couple things on my mind right now. One is pertains to the type of marketing we need to do. I think that it's particularly important more than ever that we're showing up in relevant ways to consumers, number one, which means, leveraging data to ensure that the experiences, the marketing, the information we're putting in front of consumers reflects what they're interested in and shows we know them, but not in a specific way.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm just curious, have you seen that change dramatically over the last kind of 6 months in terms of what people expect to hear or what they're interested in, or has that remained sort of constant?
There are two changes I see in the last few months. One is we see more and more in our research about consumers something that's called sort of like scarcity mindset or tunnel vision. When we are stressed out and we are anxious, we typically become less aware of all the different options we have around us. We become very focused on what's right in front of us, and we become short-term thinkers. And so we've really challenged ourselves in our marketing, in our customer experience, to anticipate what people need in the moment. And that's why I'm saying the bar is higher for relevance. People can't take in as much information. They can't consider as many options. They don't have the patience. They don't have the time. And so that raises the bar to the degree to which we can be relevant to consumers. And I think the other big shift for us is our marketers, right? The people delivering the customer experience or the marketing campaigns to consumers. You know, our own teams are having to adjust to new ways of working, right? Working from home, working in strenuous circumstances as well. And so we're having to raise the bar for how we take care of our customers, but also how we take care of our marketers.
Yeah, and there's so much to unpack there, and I want to come back to that, but I'd like to bring Sepanta into the conversation as well. And I think, you know, you will have a very interesting perspective on all of the things that have shifted, because you're in an industry that has had arguably the biggest shift that in a short period of time that maybe has ever happened when it comes to food service and restaurants. And I wonder if you could just talk about I'm sure there's been a big impact. If you could just talk about that, and maybe also for people who are not as familiar with your amazing brand, just give them a little bit of background on what Nandos is and sort of the history and heritage of it, because I think that's such a fascinating marketing story.
With pleasure, thank you. Yeah, Nandos is a South African PERi chicken restaurant, a group of restaurants. We were born in the late 80s and the kind of the downfall of apartheid. And as a result, we were social commentary and kind of tackling taboos and difficult subjects is where we thrive. That's how the brand was built around the world. And also, you know, inclusion of South Africa in the global community gave us the world stage. And that's the reason why I'm kind of sitting in Washington, D.C. and able to take part in this fantastic panel. And part of that, we kind of heritage of the brand continues. And we find ourselves in a space, whether it is whatever the social commentary topics might be, whether it's political, pandemic related, is where we challenge ourselves to find a voice. Why? Because you know, the spirit of the new South Africa, which led it into kind of being included in the world stage, is interwoven into the DNA of our brand, and quite frankly, there's a bit of a gap. It is a difficult, treacherous waters to tread, particularly now in heightened, you know, political situations. But when we get it right, it really works for us. So that's kind of a little bit of a background about where the brand is from and why we do some of the things we do. And I believe if I don't acknowledge the fact that it came from entrepreneurship and opportunism, because there is an opportunity and upside along with a big risk. Some of the things that we found, you know, as being impacted off the bat, you know, the bigger half of our business disappearing overnight, is that we can be more agile. We've had to be more agile when there's a fight and flight reflex interwoven in any brand or any company's sense of resilience, and we were surprised at how quickly we could actually move. A lot of the long-burning innovation and kind of different ways of doing things were on our plans, on our 3-year plans for a very long time. It's just that this current situation is meant to just do things quicker because we've had to. We didn't have the luxury of time to wait and pontificate too much.
Yeah, and I wonder if, I mean, for those who aren't familiar with the voice of Nandos, I can say with authority, I think that it is high on personality. You're unafraid as a brand to kind of take a stand, to put perhaps things that some other people might consider controversial, but you're just kind of living up to the brand reputation and putting it out there no matter what country you're in. And Nandos is in many different countries, including here in the US. And I wonder if you feel like having that brand personality on your sleeve, so to speak, might have helped you when things went south.
Yeah, absolutely, without a doubt. I think it's provided first and foremost a rally cry for us internally, because like Katya said, it's the people. We are saying it's the people who make the chicken, and if the people all the way from grillers to the people who market the brand, if you're able to give them something to focus on, to rally behind, we do amazing things. We move mountains, and we kind of can operate within a pandemic with crazy restrictions, health requirements, reduced demand, labor scarcity, etc. But also from a consumer perspective, this is when I think Bill said it. The great these kind of extraneous circumstances provide great opportunity to innovate, and people gravitate towards brands that stand for something, that truly stand for something. The more direct, the better in our experience. And so during the pandemic, when we were one of the first brands to fully go behind, we're just going to give away food to people on the front lines, whether that's in the hospitals, people who deliver your mail. We're just going to do it because it's right. That kept our people employed, that kept the supply chain going, that kept the restaurants open, and that eventually got kind of pressed and got the customers to support the cause. So that was then, and now we're kind of busy with trying to get people to vote.
Yeah, it's so important to stand for something bigger. And Bill, I was just thinking as Sepanta was talking just about the relationship between what you're putting out in the world as the message and what people expect from you. And I know that your whole background, I mean, we worked together a long time back when you were with Intel, and now you're at Honeywell, and these are all kind of huge B2B brands with lots of different verticals and lots of different categories and industries that you're working on. And one of the challenges when it comes to any of those brands, especially in the B2B space, is having that unified voice when you have so many different verticals that you're dealing with of people who care about different things and are buying on a long lead cycle. I mean, sometimes even years, right, before they decide to go ahead and buy something. How do you think about something that feels hopefully quite short term in its impact, right? The pandemic's right here, it's right now, it's changed everything. Like, our worlds have been upended in 6 months, and yet you're tasked with, from a marketing perspective, thinking about something on a much longer time scale typically, right?
Yeah, I mean, we have a framework of a brand that is actually pretty difficult to put together, because you're right, Honeywell's a conglomerate, right? Dozens of very different products and services that we offer, but we wrapped it up into a campaign called Future Shapers, with the theme of innovation, right? We're innovators, we want to create the future with you, let's future shape. And so that was a good theme, right? But it was much more focused on employees that were doing really cool, innovative things as the campaign rolled out. But
and that was before the pandemic, right?
Yeah, right. And so then all of a sudden the pandemic hits, right? And the fortunate thing was the foundation of having a heritage of invention and wanting to invent, right, future shape, still kind of fit that motif, but we quickly pivoted to, how can we help you get back? How can we restore confidence in air travel? How can we get your building healthier? All these different pieces of Honeywell all came back to the theme of, how can we help get you back? How can we help you succeed in the new norm? And so that was a really quick pivot that we've done as well. And you should be able to see it hopefully in our marketing materials, but it's much more focused on definitely a new norm. How do we get everyone back, especially in air travel, right, which has been affected quite a lot.
Yeah, and does that I'm just thinking about the resonance of a message like that, right? It seems, I mean, emotionally, it certainly seems like the right message. We all want to have things back, right? We want to get back to, whether you call it the new normal or the future normal or whatever the terminology is. Like, we want it back. We want to get back on the plane. We want to get back to traveling. We want to get back to restaurants. We want to have the things that we're missing. To what degree do you feel like marketing can be part of that, right?
It's interesting. I kind of like what Katya said about having her organization where it's experience plus marketing, because I would lean towards the experience side of there. What type of experience do you want, and what are you portraying? And I'll actually speak to my personal life on that one. There's restaurants that my wife and I will go to now that we're so impressed with how they set up the distancing, so social distancing, the masks, how they took the reservation, how they warned you about making sure that you're prepared for the experience, that we'll now go back to a restaurant that may be more money, a little further away, maybe not the exact meal that we wanted. We'll prefer those restaurants, right? Brand preference, experience, customer experience, just because of what they're doing in preparation for that. And I'm going to guess for most of us, then that becomes the favorite restaurant even after the COVID goes away, right? Just because of the experience they prepared for us now, we're so happy about it that we're going to go and change our behavior and attend those restaurants or those outings or whatever you're doing in your personal lives more often. I would give an example of Southwest Airlines as well. They've been really communicative, very flexible on their refunds, no middle seat, how they board is different. You really experience it, and I appreciate that department's a single department over in Katya's area.
Yeah, and Katya, I think that this is one of those really interesting moments in time where you probably, I'm guessing, and maybe I'm totally off base, but there's probably some people within an organization like Capital One who are looking at this moment and saying, okay, what new products should we put out there that people need or that can help people? And there's other people who say, look, we've already got all of our stuff, all of our experience. We just need to somehow modify it. So can you maybe take us into that question of, should a moment like this drive you to invent something new, or should it just help you to be better at what you already have, or maybe it's a little of both?
I think it's all of the above. I think first of all, we have great existing products that we had to adjust and change given the changing consumer context we were just talking about. So for example, we were just talking about travel. We have Venture, which is a travel credit card. People are traveling less, right? We have Savor, which is a card that really has historically celebrated dining out and concerts. And so we actually looked at the benefits we provide to those cards, with those cards, and added things like Uber Eats or streaming services as benefits to reflect that our consumers aren't on airplanes as much. They're not going to big concerts at the moment, but we can make adjustments that provide rewards that matter to them in this moment. So I would put that in the category of thinking about what adjustments need to be made to the product we deliver now. I think to your other point, this is a great moment for innovation. I think that it is opening up new horizons and new opportunities. And I think it's really our job as leaders, as marketing executives, to always say, yes, there are challenges now, but what are new windows of opportunity where we can show up in more meaningful ways than ever for those we serve? And so an example for that with us is at Capital One, we know more and more people are conducting their shopping online, right? And so we've really deepened our offerings for helping you find the best coupons, price comparison, things like that online with Capital One Shopping, because we know that that is going to be an area that has certainly been a change that's accelerated with coronavirus, but is likely going to continue that trajectory. And so how do we continue to innovate in that area? And so we are thinking about the next offerings we have that serve the online shopping behavior, because we know that is where the world is going.
Yeah, I wonder, when you talk about that, one of the things that I was just thinking about was the insurance industry, and specifically car insurance, and what happened with people not driving to work anymore, and people are driving a lot less. And so the cost of the claims has gone down. And there were a handful of insurance companies that said, look, we're spending a lot less money paying out claims, therefore we're making a lot more money, so we'll give some of it back to you as a rebate. And then everyone else in the insurance industry said, oh yeah, us too. And I wonder, how important is it to be first, right? To like you mentioned with some of your travel credit cards, like people aren't traveling as much. So like when you think about like being out there and saying, look, we're proactively changing all of this stuff, like how important is the urgency of it, like being the first to do it versus reacting to what competitors are doing?
Well, in an ideal world, I think there is a first mover advantage. But there are a lot of great companies that were not the first movers that figured out how to, including in the technology, computers, I can think of so many different places. So I think first mover is nice, but not required. I think at the end of the day, I think our customers judge us for several things. One, do you understand my personal circumstances right now? And are you understanding what is relevant to me or not? And did you make that change soon enough for me? And that might be first, it might be second, but did you make that adjustment that reflected my needs now? I think the second thing is, do you understand like that I want work done on my behalf. I want you to proactively do things that provide me value rather than sitting back and waiting for me to ask or complain. So I think the thing about the insurance example is that's a great example of proactively leaning into doing something good for the consumer. I think
For some of them.
Yeah.
The ones who did, the ones who did it before they were first forced to, right?
Right, but I'm not sure the consumer sits back and says, oh, well, this other insurance company did that 9 days ago. I think at the end of the day, consumers want to know that the company didn't do it because they filed a complaint. But or
there was a media report saying,
am I getting a relevant experience? Is my company doing work on my behalf or doing nice things for me? And do they have a sense of purpose and mission? Like, are they being authentic about this? I think that's important too.
Yeah. Do they care? I mean, that's the big question. And Sepanta, I wonder if maybe we can turn the lens a little bit with you to what I think, and many of us who are marketers think are probably the two most impactful areas of marketing, which is word of mouth and loyalty. And one of the things that I've certainly found in my community, and maybe you guys have seen the same thing, is the restaurants in particular that we have always gone to before the pandemic. Like now I find myself continuing to go there and get takeout. I give them bigger tips because I want them to survive, I want the bookstores to survive. I want the restaurants to survive. And I wonder if maybe you could talk, Sepanta, specifically about loyalty and human generosity and whether you've hopefully seen a little bit of that just in the experience of the restaurants.
Yeah. I think that there is a sense of reciprocity is a little bit more immediate. That when, like Katya said, you do things authentically, and whether you've managed to benefit from the first move initiative or you've used the time to hopefully refine how you react to the situation. But that reciprocity is a lot more palpable and also more amplified. So people want to talk about it and evangelize and get the friends to you because they want to show their support, because there is that strange feeling of we experiencing more or less the same disruption of life, and so there is that, and there is a oh great, you open, but people are want to understand more. Are you doing the hygiene factors correctly? The low order stuff all of a sudden become very important. And to what Bill said, that will then solidify how comfortable they are and how they carry on using you. And so I think it's a lot more, the environment right now is a lot more primed to kind of capitalize on the word of mouth and what you're doing, and people going beyond the traditional means of transactional loyalty want to support, especially if they believe what you're doing resonates with them. It's tough, I think, because there's also physical barriers. People used to come into the city and to buy Nandos, and now they can't get it. But all of a sudden, the delivery radiuses are bigger, and so now they can have the brand. Now they're incredibly appreciative and vocal about it. So there's certainly been that shift. But I think in terms of traditional loyalty schemes, we've had to adjust those, because all of a sudden we don't have the predictable demand, and so a lot of people's free chicken will expire. And so we said, hey guys, don't worry about it. It's on us. It's windows extended. So it's impacted on both sides of traditional loyalty and also just emotional affinity.
Yeah, and I want to talk about the future. I mean, that's our theme, and the future of marketing specifically. And I was just thinking, Sepanta, with you, and then maybe with the others, a similar question that I've been wondering as we talk about disruption and everything changing. I'm curious about what has stayed the same. Like, what were you doing before with your marketing that, even though everything's changed, you're still doing and is still working? Which is hopefully why you're still doing it. So maybe Sepanta, you could go first with that. I just think that's a maybe that might ground us a little bit, just to say, look, our entire industry hasn't totally changed. Like, we're still doing something that we used to do before.
Yeah. I think that the works of marketing that are not consumer facing have stayed the same and have intensified. So the commercial aspects of marketing have we've been doing the same. We've had to speed it up and work a lot closer with interdepartmentally to understand from a supply chain perspective, how are we looking from a delivery perspective now that the business has shifted? How do we address the fact that it's a more expensive end product and it's a less profitable proposition for us, but it's a lifeline. So how do we capitalize? So all of the boring stuff for a creative marketer, for at least from a consumer perspective, is stayed the same and it's intensified. We've had to move a lot quicker and work and kind of stack hands a lot more deliberately and do those things. What stayed the same from a consumer-facing perspective is the fact that customers want to use most brands, at least us in the food service or the food sector, on their terms, which means that they don't care whether we think that the best experience is delivered in the restaurant. If they believe that the best experience for them right now is on the couch with the pajamas on, that's where we need to meet them. And so has always been, like I said, in the long-term plans, and that the plan to become channel agnostic, but now it has completely catalyzed by it, because if you're not able to do that, then we are irrelevant, quite frankly. Yeah,
that's interesting. I mean, Bill, I wonder maybe if you could tackle that on a global level for you. I mean, you're dealing with, in your role as the head of global marketing, you're dealing with the challenge across places other than the US. And I think a lot of times for us who live here, at least, we get sort of tunnel vision on what's happening here must be happening everywhere. And I think kind of logically we know that's not true. So I wonder if maybe you could tackle this question, but maybe take a global spin on it.
Yeah, I love this question. I mean, we talk about it in the department quite a lot. So at least 50% of what we're doing today, we weren't doing 24 to 36 months ago. So think of that pace of innovation in marketing, right? Where we're spending our money, what tools we're using, how we're marketing. But there's two bookends that will never change in marketing. You need to know as much as you can about the customer and what they're going through, right? The pain points they're going through. You need to know the size of the audience pretty much. And then we've really, really doubled down on obsessing about value propositions and the value that product or service brings that customer. That'll never change. It's probably existed since the Stone Ages, and it shouldn't change. And then on the other end, what we've really kept intact is what we call actionable analytics, right? Marketing's become a science, much more than just an art. And you can measure things and get insights from them and adjust almost real time by the minute or day what's working and what's not working. So those bookends haven't changed. In the middle, we're trying, experimenting, and doing a bunch of different things. I think regionally we kind of have an 80-20 rule, and that's probably still too biased to the US. We'll package up a campaign and we'll hand it off to cities, countries, regions. And we'll say, make sure you're taking the spirit of 80% of this messaging, the assets, everything that you need, but please take 20, 30% and tailor it very specifically to that customer's need and that country, right? And so we give quite a lot of flexibility to the team to say, why do you have a picture of Wrigley Field in Chicago in this ad when I'm here in Paris? You name it, Turkey, right? So we're pretty good about saying, stick to the spirit of the value prop, the product attributes, how we're launching it, why we're launching it, the messaging, but please tailor it.
That nuance is so important. I mean, I remember back when I was working in an agency in Australia and we were working with a big cereal brand, and our globalization/localization for that cereal brand was to take the exact box design that they had created in the US and airbrush out the fruit, because Australian law said you couldn't show fruit on the box if there was no fruit in the product. And there was no fruit in the product. So our entire job was to airbrush out the fruit. And otherwise, we just kept the exact same thing. So I don't think that's what you mean. I think you probably mean something a little bit. That doesn't feel like 20 to 30% to me. That feels like, 0.2%. But yeah, anyway. Katya, I wonder if in this question of what has stayed the same, you could maybe take us inside the consumer mindset a little bit, because you're really hearing from through the team that you've got and also the role that you've got, you're really hearing from consumers on a really important element of their life, which is their finances, right? Which has changed for a lot of people in terms of their jobs and their savings and how they spend and what they spend on. So maybe you could take us into kind of what people are feeling right now Maybe that's too big of a question, but I'm just curious about your insights around that as it pertains to your audience, and then how you take that and figure out what should we keep doing and what should we maybe stop doing.
Mm-hmm. I love the points that were just made here, and Bill, I love your bookends. I think that the thing that will never ever change in marketing, and that works in any country and any place, is understanding a consumer deeply and working backwards from there. So that is the question. I will say though, we can still have a lot of blind spots about that. So I think there are two halves of solving for that. The first half is, who do you have in the room doing the research and listening? I think that, we are on a big journey at Capital One of diversity and inclusion and belonging, and we still have work to do. I am passionate about the notion that you can't understand consumers deeply unless you have a diversity of opinion and perspectives in a room that really knows how to listen for different things and doesn't bring their own frameworks and their own biases to trying to understand a diverse group of consumers, different segments of consumers, and so on. So that's sort of the first thing, is like, who do you have in the room doing this important work is pivotal to the quality of the work and your ability to work backwards from someone else's mindset. And then I'd say on the consumer side, what's the same, what's changed? I mean, I think what we are seeing, to build on what I said earlier, I think what we're seeing is people are very stressed out in general right now. I'm speaking to the United States. I think around many parts of the world as well. But people are anxious, they're fatigued, they've experienced an inordinate amount of ambiguous loss. We continue to contend with a high degree of uncertainty. And in that kind of environment, right, we all have limited bandwidth, limited patience. And so what we are trying to do when we think about our marketing is, first of all, how do we do the best job predicting what people need or want at any given time? We have never needed to be more relevant to consumers and do more work on their behalf than now. Is critical. The second thing is, we really need to show up in a caring way. I loved the examples of on the panel here of people who either work for restaurant chains or have been to restaurants, of the feeling we get when we know someone genuinely cares for us. That's always important as a brand, but we know more than ever that consumers want to know that their best interests are at heart right now. Because everyone is facing a lot of things. And so I know those sound like generalizations, but they're really profound and they're really tricky to work backwards from when we design our marketing, when we design our experiences, particularly, like I said earlier, if you don't have a diverse group of people in the room with a high degree of psychological safety pointing out things that we may be missing as we do that. So those are sort of some of the ingredients we're putting together. But I think that, that endless endeavor we have, which is never one point in time, of trying to understand the people that we're here to serve. We have to, refresh our understanding of that more frequently than ever right now, because we are in such a fluid environment.
The endless endeavor. I love that. I think that should be your book title that you start working on immediately. That's really good. That's really good. So I think we can close the conversation perhaps by maybe benefiting from all of your leadership. I mean, you're each in roles where you're leading people doing marketing and communications and storytelling on behalf of your brands, sometimes with your own staff, sometimes with vendors or agencies that you're working with. And you really, that's the audience for this, right? It's the American Marketing Association. It's everybody who's in every one of those roles. And I wonder if you could put on your inspirational marketing leader hat for a moment and think about what advice you might offer to someone who is either working on your brand and trying to do the best work they possibly can, or someone who's kind of figuring out what their own personal pivot is going to be inside of this industry that's continually changing, and maybe could benefit from just what you've seen now, and also through your career, what you've seen to get to the point that you're at now. So maybe, Bill, if we could hear from you first about that and any sort of advice for the future that you could give.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of managing the staff, the word that hit me in the face as you were asking was empathy. Trying to be even more empathetic to the team, what they're going through. We all have our examples of working from home, single moms especially, right? Trying to take care of a baby and call into a Zoom meeting. I also kind of lose sleep over lip service though too, because you kind of manage the team. You tell them, hey, we're going to do less. We have less. Let's do less. Let's prioritize. But we're not really following through with that. So I worry about those two things. But I'll reiterate what I said earlier. Big fan of innovating and investing during downturns. Really been encouraging the team and folks to invent, test, try, and be comfortable with failing. I think Honeywell, especially in the aerospace division, is very much they're made up of military and pilots, right? So it's take orders, don't go outside the box, be safe, right? And so you try and instill a culture amongst the marketing team of take risks, engage and see, fail fast, all those words we've all heard, but you really have to take to heart and move forward as you go through. And last one for me is some advice I got at Intel a long time ago. This day will end. And unfortunately, this day has been, I don't know, anyone want to do the math on, starting in Asia at the end of last year, it hasn't ended, but it will end. And we have to be a stronger, I think we'll be a more cohesive team moving forward that I hope even innovates more down the road.
Awesome. Inspirational words. I like it. I'm ready to go now. Okay. So let's see. Katya, maybe you could go next. Give us your thoughts for the future. How do we kind of get ready for what comes next? What are you telling your team?
Well, a lot of it's building what Bill just said, but I think the first thing is self-care. Again, it sounds a little buzzwordy, but especially for leaders, many leaders I work with, go out and think of everyone else before themselves, but we really do have to invest in our own energy so we have some to give to others and show up as we wish as leaders. So that's really important, is forgive yourself, give yourself grace, and take the time or do the activities you need to recharge so that you can be there for others in the way you want. I think another really important thing right now when a lot of us feel nervous or anxious or overwhelmed is remembering the importance of creating psychological safety on our teams. So to Bill's point about failing and risk, like the main thing you need to be in an environment where you're comfortable doing that is psychological safety. And so ensuring that the people on your team feel like they can show up as their true selves and take risks, and that's what you expect, and there's not going to be a catastrophic downside to that, that's really important too. And then I'd say the third thing, whether you're a marketer who is leading a bunch of people or a marketer contemplating your next move, I think a really great exercise right now is reacquainting yourself with your sense of purpose. Like we all have through lines in our lives. We have things that we care about that show up over and over again, right? And everyone's is unique. And when we tap into that, it can help us find our best selves. It can help us do our best work, and it can help us lead to the next great opportunity where we're going to be able to really excel.
That's great. Reacquainting ourselves with that purpose is so important. You're absolutely right. And last but certainly not least, Sepanta, maybe you can give us your closing thoughts on that question about the future.
Yeah, very hard X to follow, and I've been making notes for myself. So thank you, Bill and Katya. I mean, really, the only little nuggets that I have is that pick a few things. We can't boil the ocean, and it's if you can give back time to people. It's funny, everyone that I deal with on a daily basis has never been so time poor, and we kind of mostly in our houses. So if you can give time back, that's what really we try to do. And again, a big cliche, but someone told me that cliches are usually have a big element of truth in them. But when you're moving quickly, you can let perfect get in the way, and so the progress towards goal becomes really what we got to just kind of relentlessly pursue, because I don't think we can get perfection ever, but especially during this time. And be intentional about connecting with people, because that is the currency that we can buy when we have the time, so that when it comes to back-to-back calls and just pushing and pushing and pushing, we have the currency to spend. So I can just pick up the phone and just jump right into what we need to do, because we've somewhere down the line deliberately connected and know what's up on a personal level. So
yeah, that's those are all fantastic thoughts. I mean, have empathy, remember your purpose, support one another, be intentional. These are all fantastic perspectives. I just want to say thank you to all of you for joining the panel, for sharing your thoughts about the future of marketing, of our industry. And remember, just to everybody who's listening here and who's been part of the panel, just support one another. Like we're in a moment where we're all together in this industry. We'll probably work with one another at one point because people tend to move around, and we can do this for one another. We can support one another's businesses. We can support the industry, and I hope that this panel has been helpful for all of you to do that. So thank you for paying attention. Thank you for tuning in for this virtual summit, and remember, always stay non-obvious.